Monster Hunter World Ancient Forest Steamforged Games Review. After ignoring the platform for what seems like the longest time, I've been slowly reacquainting myself with the board game arena and all the various digitised joy that it brings. It's a strange mix of simple games translated almost just component to screen, to the bigger and more crunchy affairs. Your Earths, your Ark Novas, Carnegie's, City of the Big Shoulders, where all the housekeeping and number crunching is done behind the scenes, and it's relatively impossible to make an illegal move. But at the same time, still play a game and have absolutely not the first clue about how that game plays. It's highlighted to me that some games need to be tactile to work, and that other games that see a massive calculations and numbers are actually extremely shallow affairs where working out of wins and losses was just part of the fun. It's a world away from Steamforged games, from what they've been trying to achieve over the last 8 years with their various forays into translation of video game IPs into tangible board game slices. The irony for Steamforged is that a lot of their cardboard property already exists in its final complete form in the digital space, which is probably, well, apart from licensing, why they're yet to grace the arena in person, and also because, well, Capcom and FromSoft, they already have that covered. The tightrope that Steamforged treads is a balancing act of representing the video game gameplay with turning the entire end product into a half-arsed dungeon crawl hybrid with maths and tables. So sometimes it's embraced the journey fully with its Resident Evil series. Other times, like Horizon Zero Dawn, it's simply taken a slice of the action and presented that as gameplay to an equal amount of boos and cheers. With Monster Hunter World, Steamforged is choosing to loosen the belt a little and let itself chomp down on that extra course, diet be damned. The first thing is the box is huge. It's almost double the height of the Horizon Zero Dawn and Resident Evil base game boxes, and for good reason too, as while there's only 8 miniatures in the entire base game to play with, these miniatures stretch the definition of miniatures so far that, well, they should be called mediumtures. They're huge. I mean, you painters out there are going to have your little cups of joy overflowing when you paint them, because you're going to need cups full of paint to cover the behemoths. Secondly, there's over 600 cards waiting to unwrap and be sorted and shuffled and ordered and sleeved. You're going to have to chew your food to get through this little lot. A chunky rulebook, an even chunkier quest book to accompany it all. I'm going there. Everything about this game shouts monster. I'm not sorry. There are, of course, expected doubts once you dig in. When I saw that the board for the first time using the small circular nodes, I must admit that my first thoughts were back to the days of the Dark Souls board game. And I hope we weren't going down that frustrating road. The sheer number of cards screamed at me there was going to be so much unnecessary over-required setup. After all, we're trying to emulate a video game that people spend weeks of their lives, if not months, playing. And that alone requires representation of the various facets of what the video game offers. Luckily, in terms of the setup and teach, the rulebook demonstrates it comes from a team used to combining game setup and rule teach, and you're practically on your way to starting your first turn by the time you separate out all the various decks and chits. While the huge number of cards seems slightly intimidating, the iconography on the card backs makes lighter work of the initial setup. Monster Hunter gives each of the 4 hunters their own set of equipment to play with, which they'll upgrade during the game to make stronger and more powerful to take on the larger beasts of pain. Even in the solo variant, you'll always be fielding 2 hunters on the quest. You'll have a live action deck to plan your attacks, and a damage deck when you're successful, and an all too familiar life dial sitting at the side, recording all those delicious bumps, bruises, and loss of limbs. All in all, the card colour palette is sombre. It's almost dull. It's full of dark colours, so it sits in the table looking slightly sorry for itself. Thank goodness the monster cards and boards are a completely different representation. It's like a cheeky intern crept in and decided to paint the town red, blue and yellow. Each of the fabled monsters is represented on the board in an art style that seems to be a mixture of a bastardized cave painting, with illustrations of the monsters resplendent in bright colours that lift the entire part of the game, but also serve to highlight the points of the monsters you're hunting, plus the areas of the beast that can be attacked when you have to be, and where you have to be in order to kind of like deal out that damage. After the navy and browns of Resident Evil, well, this is a real delight for the eyes, and I'm kind of hopeful that this is repeated in future Steamforged games. But just when you expect Monster Hunter to go in the same direction as Horizon Zero Dawn, it then sets you a reading exercise. Actually, it takes you down a choose-your-own-adventure exercise, where the first part of any quest that you take is about exploring, reading sections, and then flicking back and forward between the pages of a quest book. It kind of makes sense as a normally in the video game, you're usually just spending your time gathering resources and potential extra resources to upgrade your kit. Now, fortunately, this isn't a time-wasting event, as you can decide to try and mainline to the big bad or explore a bit more, and you get the chance to gain extra potions or upgrade materials and scout tokens. Now, scout tokens, they help decide the level of the monster you'll be taking on. You have more tokens and the monster will have a deadlier move to deal with. Some quests you'll take on will require you to have certain kind of scout fly levels in order to meet the monsters you're trying to hunt, and then battle commences. The battling in Monster Hunter is kind of further evidence that Sherwin Matthews is honing his craft when it comes to designing combat. There's controlled randomness in the combat cards that you'll place down to strike against the monster. There's some real thought gone into how to bring the main bad guy to life when you're facing them on the arena, and this is important because unlike Horizon Zero Dawn or even Resident Evil, you're only ever facing off against one enemy at a time. And that enemy has to come to the table with a whack of hit points and some attacks that can knock the wind out of you. There's no dice. There's no rolling. Therefore, there's no feeling like you got unlucky because you got 2 pips instead of 4. Instead, you have a system where you're told how many can attack and how many attack cards they can play in their stamina map before they end their turn. There's damage cards that decide how hard you've hit, and time cards that govern how long you have to do it, and then what you have to do when your turn ends. As expected, when you're facing foes of such a size, there's arcs to take into consideration and monster parts to break. And at the end of it all, you'll either walk away with claws and teeth and hide to use as weapon upgrades, or you'll be limping back to headquarters to regroup and consider another strategy. Just like the video game, you'll make decisions to tackle tougher foes after you upgrade your weapons, or you can take a palico with you if you're not feeling as brave. It's like these little kind of cute cat people thingies. Yeah, something, I don't know. They go meow. So it plays like a light RPG with a light touch of narrative, and it hits like a Focus Miniatures combat game. And it's strange, because as far as representing the video game, it's probably up there in Resident Evil as being one of the more faithful representations that Steamforged has done. And it certainly hasn't taken the lazy route of simply reskinning one of the other offerings in the portfolio and offering it up as a new experience. My only concern is whether the continual cycle of scout, hunt and upgrade is going to be enough over a longer period of time after repeated plays, and the game will become a preordained process rather than a dynamic challenge. It kind of misses the mark a little bit in the humour of the game. It takes itself maybe a little bit too seriously, and that's why the juxtaposition of the bright kind of monster encounter cards do kind of enough work to kind of lift the tone a little bit. But as with all of these things, there's an abundance of expansions and additional content for those who want to be fighting monsters for as long as they wish to, including the latest Iceborne expansion. For those who wondered if Steamforged have managed to transfer a much-loved Capcom franchise from screen to table, then on this occasion I would say that they have, and I think those fans will be happy with this rather monstrous box of delights. So this review is based on the retail version of the game provided to us by Steamforged, but we weren't paid any monetary compensation for the review, so we give a general overview of the gameplay, so not all of the mechanical aspects of the game may be mentioned. The majority of the games that we play are going to take a reasonable number of sessions and playthroughs to fully understand every possibility that they offer. So we hope this write-up gives you an idea of whether or not this game is something you consider playing or even adding to your collection. Even if we don't like something, hopefully it helps you decide if it's something that you would want to find out more about. But we always suggest you check out a gameplay video to give you a better understanding of the game as it's played. Now, if you'd like to support more content on the podcast, on the blog, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can obviously consider backing us through Patreon. But if you're listening to this on Spotify, give us a like, give us a share, comment on the bottom. It all helps. And thank you for listening. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, make something awful, stay spicy. Until the next time, goodbye.